Okay, on.
Very good. Those of you that remember the late Beatles videos of the late 60s, we're now going to mimic and impersonate those videos by running through the same alleyways that they ran through.
That's an alley that they did?
And here we are at Mason's Yard.
Ah, okay.
Now, Mason's Yard, this used to be a mews and stables.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a place where the drivers of the carriages, the coaches and horses would bring their masters. Their masters would come here and they would deal in business out in Mayfair and St James's. They would actually play checkers, which is why that's called the Checkers Tavern. That's actually a late 18th century pub, one of the oldest pubs in London. Not the oldest, but one of the oldest.
I know.
And they used to wait for their masters here.
Ah.
Okay, but this used to be an area where stables were and where the horses were kept for the area. But more importantly, let's go and stand by the side of this gallery because they don't particularly like me doing my tours in front of the gallery.
Okay.
So we'll find a way that we can go before and they don't spot us.
Especially with the guy with the...
Oh, do you want to right
Here you've got the Stephen Onpin Gallery. Now this is where in 1966 a young Japanese lady by the name of Yoko Ono,
Never heard
who was
of her.
an artist. She was in here and
Questionable
she
artist.
a questionable artist, but she was she had some exhibits on show, and one of the exhibits she had on show was a plank of wood with golden nails in it, and for 5 shillings you could come in, hammer in a golden nail, admire what you've done and then left. John Lennon came in, looked at the plank of wood and pretended to hammer in a pretend nail, at which point Yoko Ono grabbed his hand and said, "Excuse me sir, that's 5 shillings. And he said to Yoko Ono, "Do you not know who I am? I'm a Beatle." And she said, "What's a Beatle?" Now, being here in 1966, her not knowing what a Beatle was, I think, is not true. So she allowed John Lennon to actually hammer in a fake nail with a fake hammer, and he put a fake 5 shillings into a box. And there's how the romance blossomed. And within a year, they were an item. And this is where they first met, in this particular gallery.
Wow.
So this was the start of a very famous romance in rock. If we look over here, we've got the Scotch House of St James's, this rather black building. It's still a nightclub, but it's a very, very famous music venue. And it's where in the 60s and into the 70s you had the Rolling Stones, T-Rex, the Yardbirds, the Animals.
They were all nothing yet.
They all used to go into this particular club. Okay, it's where Paul McCartney actually first met Stevie Wonder, and Stevie Wonder performed his first ever live gig in this particular club itself. Okay, now there was a guy called Dan Arden, and Dan Arden was interested in scouting for new talent, and he was told about a young guy by the name of Jimi Hendrix. He went to New York, discovered Jimi Hendrix in the Wild Club on the east side of New York, brought him over here, and this is where Jimi Hendrix played his very, very first gig in London.
Seattleite, by the way.
Sorry?
Jimi Hendrix is from Seattle.
He's from Seattle, is he?
Yeah, so he must have felt right at home here with all the wet.
Well, he loved it, and it was unusual for somebody like him to be playing that type of music, actually. And we'll talk about the juxtaposition of that when we talk about the Rolling Stones later on in the tour. It's still a famous nightclub. Stella McCartney recently had a party here for a fashion house, and various other pop stars and rock singers come here and have.
So
parties.
it's just the first floor that's the...
It's the first floor, and then there's a basement. Okay, and this is also, by the way, we ran through the alleyway earlier on, but this is also one of the alleyways that the Beatles ran through when they did their videos in the late 60s, etc.
Did they have the chainsaw going on in the background?
They didn't have the chainsaw going on in the background, and they didn't stop for a drink at the Checkers Tavern, although there is a picture of the Beatles in there commemorating the fact that they used this alleyway.
Well, what happened? What's this?
That's just an office building now.
It's ugly, huh?
And on the other side, there's actually an art gallery. So there's quite a few, there's 2 or 3 art galleries and fancy galleries in this particular complex, if you like, or this particular muse. Plus you got Scotch of St James's, which is still going strong. Okay.
Interesting.